Commissioner Tom Dayley, how are you, sir?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me here and discussing an important thing for the county.
I have heard about the expansion of Expo Idaho, and I think you related to me as well as other people that it's like, look, if you know Central Park, we are trying to make a Central Park style public offering for our community, which is super cool because I have gone by Expo Idaho. I haven't, we went to Christmas things and we've gone there a couple times, but if it becomes the type of thing that you guys are planning, as I'm sure it will, oh man, what a benefit to the entire community. So let's chat about this. Walk me back through the original use and the original iterations of design for Expo Idaho. And then at what point did we decide essentially, okay, look, I think we could use this. It's not being utilized as effectively as possible.
Well, originally it was a fairgrounds. It was the county fairgrounds, which in an agricultural society, fairgrounds in the fall, produce, animals, all the rest of the things that were wanted to be displayed to the public of what happened for the production year. That was the focus originally. As part of the fairgrounds, of course, horses are part of the fairgrounds, so they created a horse racetrack at the fairgrounds as part of the fairgrounds. Well, over a period of time, there were a variety of things that happened that created that, so it wasn't operationally feasible, and so it became just open area in the county in the 240 acres that wasn't being utilized. So commissioners previous to mine said, okay, we need to figure out the best and use of this land for the benefit of the entire county and possibly the whole Treasure Valley community. And so they went out, they did a long, laborious process of talking to people in the community. It took several years to talk to people. What kind of things do you want? One of the things that was identified is they want sports, which we'll get into later.
Sure.
Which is part of what's there now. The Hawks is already a component part of there. But they also wanted a park itself, just a genuine park. So that was part of the magic of it. Some people wanted actually to sell the land for development, have it apartments, businesses, etc., and then move the county fairgrounds out further into the county. What prevailed, in my opinion as well, is back to what you were alluding to. It's a precious thing that's undeveloped, 240 acres in the middle of now basically a developed area. And once it's developed, you can't take it back.
I was going to say, once you grow houses, those houses are never going away. Like that is something we never, and yeah, you could push it out to other places and maybe, make whatever it might be. But at some point I feel like there are aspects of our community and city and just society plannings where it's like, okay, perhaps this is like, we're going to make a little sacrifice here in this area over here for this gem over here. And we're going to hold on to that. And that's going to become our thing. And we all buy in on it and we all benefit from it. And it's awesome. So yeah, when I remember somebody, can't remember exactly who it was, talking to me about developing it over I think it was Brenton Durst, but he was saying, hey, look, we should at least have it on the table. It's like, okay, like that's your position. Like has nothing to do with me. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that idea.
And that was on the table. It was on the table for consideration. And thankfully, before I got there, they were moving against that. And we finally, when I came on board, we finally made the decision we're not going there. We're not having development. So we had to figure out what we were going to do. And you alluded to the Central Park. And what we want this to be is a legacy for the future, not just today, but for the future. And I can just imagine, because I've been to Central Park several times, and just walking through it, and it's in the middle of Manhattan. It's 640 acres. Interesting enough, it's a whole section of land, because that's a huge island most people don't realize. But when you go into that park, I can imagine, because they set it up at the very beginning when they started developing the island. And I can imagine in the late 1800s, especially entrepreneurs, I'm sure there was a lot of conflict. Right. Why don't we develop Central Park?
People are dying to get their hands on it. Yeah.
That 640 acres of real estate. But thankfully for them, they created a legacy. And of course, now that would never happen. The people of New York would never allow that to happen. That's what we want this to be, so that question will never come up again. We're going to create a legacy park here, the equivalent of Central Park, like I said, that the county, the Treasure Valley can view as a treasure that we want to keep as a legacy for our community, and that's what we're trying to develop.
I grew up again in the Bay Area in California, SF Bay Area, and I remember we went to Golden Gate Park all the time. We would my dad took us there a bunch, like back when rollerblading was cool, so we'd go rollerblade on the weekends sometimes. And I grew up going to the Academy of Sciences, which was also in Golden Gate Park, and we ended up taking our boys when we lived back there. We would do Academy of Science trips all the time, and just having that space there really, man, it really was great. It really was super incredible. I also did jiu-jitsu tournaments there. They had a big area. It's I can't remember exactly what the building was called, but it was an area where you could engage in sports tournaments and things like that. It's really cool stuff. So what's on the plan then for Expo Idaho?
So what we did is we went through while I was here the last 2 years, we went through a laborious process. Once we had made the decision to basically develop, and you have the map here.
Yeah.
The original development was for sports as part of the component, as well as just a genuine park. So then we decided, okay, what are we going to put in the park? What kind of things does this community want in the park?
Right.
And as we had those meetings, one of the things, just as an example, we call it a blades down or wheels down now section of the park, which is up the northeast corner.
So if we're looking at this one, then it looks like, is that the top right?
Correct.
Okay, so that little red part.
That's the wheels down part,
Gotcha.
Which is skateboarding, that sort of thing.
I certainly didn't tell you. I'm hopefully getting some awesome, like, extreme inline skates for Christmas, because when I was 14, I was way into them, and I have a buddy who was also into them when he was in like high school, middle school. I'm like, bro, if we got some now with all of the pads that we didn't wear when we were kids, like, we could be awesome.
What could we do?
What could we do? Yeah. So I'll be a fan. Anyway, so that's the top right there.
And so, as an example, as we were having the public meeting, saying here's our original concept design, and they helped us kind of design it. When we were doing that skate park, because we called it a skate park at the time,
Sure.
The rollerblade community came in.
There's a community here,
and they have competitions, and they came in, and they said, if you're doing this, you needed something for us, because we're always looking for venues. Make it so that we can have competitions here. And so,
are you really telling, like, there was like a group and then a group leader that reached out to you?
Absolutely.
Can you get me in contact with these guys? I would love to have, like, the president of the rollerblading community on, just to talk to him. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. I would love to holler at me.
And they came out in force at one of our public meetings.
Wow.
Because that's why we had the picture up like this. We had the picture up and said, here's the concept. And they said, well, yes, that right there, we need something. And so we said, sit down with our staff, tell us what you need, and we will try to put that in the design. And
that's fantastic.
And that is in the design.
Awesome.
And interestingly enough, those people and we went out for a general contractor.
Sure.
And the subcontractor that's actually doing the skate park, designed the skate park, I should say, is a company out of California, and I know that's a bad word in Idaho, but it's out of California. But they're an international company that designed these. They designed the skateboard venue for the Olympics in Japan and the Olympics in Paris that just happened. So they are experts at how to put those things together. They're helping us. They're helping us put that together.
That's beautiful. So we have the top right, so that'll be the wheels down area. And then it looks like the southern portion is the river that goes down. About middle on the south, there's some orange area there. What are those areas? Because it looks like perhaps buildings or something else.
We're going to have a actual park for kids,
like play equipment.
Play equipment. And right now we're trying to figure out exactly the kind of design we're going to have on that as well. So the middle part right there, if you can see where the trees are along the edge of the river, if you look at, and I don't know if you have a picture of this, the original racetrack came over in where the left-hand side is there and came all the way over. And it was what they did when they created the racetrack is they filled in, which was part of the floodplain of the Boise River.
Gotcha.
So that's what those and the green belt is going to go through there. As you can see, that trail that's going through, that's the green belt. So we'll have that area there is now going to be designed where we're taking up part of the fill that was in there, making that back into a wetland area. So it'll be, if you've been to the tidal basin in Washington, D.C., the tidal basin was created because it was really a swamp when they created it.
Sure.
So in order to have the ebb and flow, because actually the tide comes up all the way to Washington, D.C., up the Potomac River, so only a few feet. But it does, so what they created is an area where the water could ebb and flow, and they call it the tidal basin on purpose because it is for the tide.
Right.
But and that's what we want to have there, so that when the river increases in its overflow, flood control,
it has somewhere to go.
It has, rather than just flood our park. So it'll do two things, and we're going to have part of that estuary there is also going to be for the Ada County Highway District. Right now has a pond over here on the left-hand side of what is the old park, over where those soccer fields are going to be, right over in those grassy areas. That is a settling ponds for things coming off the streets. We're going to have that flow through, so it'll flow back through the Boise River, but it'll be cleaned, as it were. So when it goes back into the Boise River, it'll go through our cleaning process in the estuary there. And
because it'll be like naturally filtered out with whatnot. So all the debris and what have you coming off of the street will naturally get pulled out.
Right.
Nice.
And it's going to be monitored by DEQ so that we won't be putting things back in the river that shouldn't be back in the river.
Right. But that serves as a really effective mechanical filtration. So even if you have litter and whatnot coming through the storm drains, I mean, it's going to be very hard to get through, like cattails and all kinds of things.
And so that's part of it as well. So what we're going to do, that fill up at the top around that border that will be separating the park at Expo from the fairgrounds and what's the fair is, that will be a berm, and it's going to be up as high as 30 feet. So it'll separate the park from the fairgrounds. So if there's something operationally going on in the park, we're doing the fair, the week and a half or 10 days of the fair, you'll still be able to go into the park, and it will still be a park that will be usable for no matter what's going on at the fair, because we'll have concerts, still have concerts there as well. So that will be all the fill in there will be the trail off of the main Boise Greenbelt. You'll be able to just go off the Boise Greenbelt, go through the park if you want, or you can just stay on the Greenbelt. So there'll be any number of things in there. There'll be places that you can stop and look at the vegetation, the wildlife. So it'll be
like little benches and things. You can watch ducks and whatnot.
Again, like Central Park. If you go into Central Park, you can go in there, and there are all sorts of things in there that you can participate in.
Yeah, and I have to imagine you guys have envisioned like a series of just small, kind of separated, like almost private little, like as you put out landscaping, you can always position a bench just one way and trees another way and then a tunnel another way, and it's like all of these little nuggets of people can sit down even though they're close to other people. They're either don't have line of sight or they have some manner of privacy.
Correct.
Which is kind of cool.
That's what all of that is going to be in there.
That'll be great.
And the vegetation will be again, we're trying to get it as natural as possible, Idaho natural. So it's going to be a variety of things in there, and for people who want to go delve into the kind of thing we're just talking about, on the Ada County website, it's adacounty.gov. There's a banner at the top right there, and you can click on that. It'll give all the details of what we're talking about.
Sure. Okay, so here's the question. Love what you're talking about. Love the skate park. Love the berm. Love the benches. What's the price tag, and how do we pay for it?
Good question. Also,
I thought so.
Also a very good question. None of it is local taxpayer dollars. It's ARPA dollars, the Affordable Care Act. But it's going to be about, we thought it was going to be about $40 million. It's going to be less than that. The contractor we just awarded the contract. It's less than that. It's between $30 and $40 million.
And you said the ARPA dollars from the Affordable Care Act. Like, how does that work?
Well, every city and county and state received payment, direct money from that fund, and so that's what we what we did in the county. Instead of folding it into our budget and then trying to figure out what we were going to do after those dollars went away, this is a one-time project, good for the county, good for the people, so that it's just one time, and it's using those dollars in a timely way and in an efficient way. And we would have had to come up with those dollars to do it, taxpayer dollars to do it, local taxpayer dollars to do it anyway.
I love that you're not taking a one-time fee and accepting a large ongoing obligation. That's, in my mind, that's the best way to manage budget surpluses. It's like, okay, look, we have this one gift. What's something that, we could do that's not going to be a big burden? But I have to imagine that, like landscaping and maintenance and stuff is going to be significant. Are you worried that can be like $1 million a year or something like that?
We don't have the full estimate, depends on but yes, but this is in what we call an enterprise area.
Okay.
An enterprise fund at the county. So everything operationally there pays for itself. So when you go to the fair in August, when you pay for those tickets, that goes into the enterprise fund and it pays for itself. So no direct property tax dollars go to maintain that facility. That's what we're trying to create as well. As we move through, like the sports facilities, the Hawks, the soccer fields, those will help us do exactly what you just said. So we will be able to maintain this park without taking any additional taxpayers' dollars to do it.
God bless you, sir. That is wonderful. So not only is the initial capital cost to do this ARPA money, but the repetitive maintenance the park will be self-sustaining. So essentially Ada County residents or whoever coming to visit or whoever happens to be in Idaho at the time, people get the benefit of this without any direct local taxpayer payment.
Exactly. That's what we're trying to do.
God, that's great.
And right now it is functioning that way. The fairground, most people don't realize, it is self-sustaining. And so when we have a concert, when you pay for a concert ticket or buy any kind of the concessions there,
sure,
that all goes into that enterprise fund, and it's all plowed back into the facility.
Now, there is not at this point, like those soccer fields and baseball fields and stuff, those don't exist currently, right?
Well, we have up in, you can't see it on this picture, but up in the far left-hand corner where Chinden and Glenwood come together, okay, on that corner, there's a grassy area. It's called Ladybird Park because back when it was developed, when it was in the middle of nowhere and it was all agricultural land around it, the county took money from the National Park Service and helped develop that. So that has to be dedicated for sports into the future forever.
Gotcha.
Never. What the original concept was to change that because it's by busy streets and limited use now. We were trying to take these soccer fields down here. We're going to trade Ladybird Park to this. Has to be approved by DC though, and we haven't gotten approval for that. So
gotcha.
We're proceeding to do it another way now and keeping Ladybird the way it is under our current scenario because we couldn't get that trade initiated fast enough to get it into this concept. But
this is fantastic stuff. I mean, the development and the one thing that I've always told people about this area is that to my mind, there's been a concerted effort to actually make life better here. It's not that we're tolerating growth and people are coming in and we don't have to do much. For instance, you see this very much in the Silicon Valley area and different areas of California where, I know it's a dirty word, but I think one of the reasons why life has become the way it is there is because there is such a draw for economic prosperity that there's no obligation from city or other people, or there's no real drive. It's like, okay, how do we attract people here with like a better park? Or how do we attract people here? Whitewater Park is a perfect example. It's like, oh my gosh, parking's free. This is amazing. Like all these things. You don't have that. You don't have to attract people with beautiful parks and recreational opportunities. First off, a lot of the recreational opportunities are like, oh, there's a mountain, go run on the mountain. It's like, okay, I'll go run a mountain. Fine, whatever. But then people were moving there because they were making a dump truck of money, and they were moving there in spite of the quality of living or cost of housing or all of these things. So because the money overcame those the prohibitive factors, right? But in this area, there is such an effort to make life better for people. And I mean, maybe to our detriment or your detriment, because I just got here, maybe to, collectively our detriment, because it is great here. And you get here and you're like, oh my gosh. I remember when I came here in November of 21. And when I was deciding to move up here, my friend took me and walked down the Greenbelt week before Thanksgiving. This is like 3 years exactly. It was literally the week before Thanksgiving. And it took me on a walk. We popped out into like Reed Merrill Park. I remember this. I was like, what's with the giant chicken? What is this? Like, what is happening here? The park's beautiful. All these people are nice. The whole area is gorgeous. It's like, wow, they really try to make life nice here. And they try to make it so that people enjoy themselves. And man, it's cool seeing this. This is something that's planned. How long will this take?
This has to be, because it's money that has to be used. So we had to let the contracts all have to be let before December of this year of 2024. Right. And the construction has to be completed by the end of 2026. So it's going to be a very quick project, but
roughly 24 months.
Right.
Gosh,
and,
that would be great.
But the people that are doing it are professionals that have done these things all over the world, literally, like I said, and they're helping us do it. And that's part of the money we're spending, is to get those kind of quality of people. And of course, we're using local people to help us as well.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, and a lot of people, this is slightly unrelated to this. A lot of people that have moved here, and I've done episodes with kind of on this issue with Mayor Chadwick from Star and Representative Mike Moyle, and other people, that the tax system, people do not understand the tax system. And I think it's really complex. We're not going to fix it all in this conversation, but the point is that the tax systems in taxing districts are broken down. I had Chief Stowell, who's the EMS chief from Canyon County, in. I also had Tyminski, Chief Tyminski, who's the fire chief in Star. They're responsible for these little taxing districts. And I actually really enjoy the system of property tax, because we get individual decisions on whether we want to continue funding certain areas or not. One example of the counter of that is when I was a younger man, there was a big, I believe it's 2010, there was a big funding crisis, especially with education in my former state. And what happened was that the state, and I realized this right before, and I was trying to talk to people about it, and it was like crickets, right? Essentially what happened is the state sent out something like 100,000 pink slips or 10,000. It was some astronomical number of pink slips to teachers. And they're like, we are in a funding crisis with education. I'm like, oh no, that's bad. But what I find out is that the state budget, right? They took the budget. They're like, all right, this is all the money we have, and it's not enough to cover all of these expenses. What do people care about the most? They care about school. So what they did is they funded all the things people would not have wanted to fund in a time of economic crisis, right? They funded all of the prisons, jails, all kinds of things, okay? And then they shortfell the education system. And they're like, we need this something $1 billion to make the education system whole. And they knew that people would be most sympathetic to the education system. And what was worse about that is that they actually wrote the bill, the taxing bill, to get Californians as a self-elect to tax themselves. They wrote it so that the money earmarked for education was only earmarked for, I believe, 2 years, and then went into the general fund for a remaining 4 years. So after the first 2 years, it just went into the general fund. The taxation stayed the same. And, we hoped they paid, the for education. Schools. Yeah, for schools. And that's exactly what happened. The bill passed, and I had been educated off of YouTube, actually. I was like, wow, somebody explained this whole thing. I was like, that's wild. And the bill passed, and I remember talking to a family member about it, and he was like, well, I think it'll be fine. I'm like, man, there's no reason they're going to make this. And again, sure enough, a couple of years later, he was like, that was a total bait and switch. But again, it was like this huge chunk, right? And I didn't understand 100% how taxation worked, but I did understand that they had this gigantic pot of money, and they doled out this money to these individual little things. And there is some of that, right? Like the Chief Stowell does get some funding from the state, right? And right. The fire district does get some funding from the state, but the individual districts have to appeal and plead their case, so to speak, to the general populace. And the general populace gets to make individual decisions about who they want to support and who they don't. Do we want to run a a supplemental levy for schools? Do we want to do something for the fire? Do we want to do something for EMS? Do we want a mosquito abatement? Like, do we want pest abatement? Things of this nature. We get a great broad menu of what we want to pick from, and then we just start picking. That's roughly how this works, right?
Right. And if you look at your tax bill, and you can actually see that on your tax bill. And I don't know if you want to put this up on
hang on.
one of these up on the screen. I have a variety of those, but these are individual taxing districts. And that, back to what you were saying, you need to look at your tax bill, because on your tax bill, it will show you the taxing districts that we have. 41 independent taxing districts in Ada County. Not everybody lives in all of those districts, because they're school districts, they're cities. Everybody lives in the highway district. They're the cemetery districts, local cemetery districts, local fire districts, library districts. So each one of those then, and you need to look at your tax bill, and you can do exactly what you just described. Look at your tax bill, and this is just a sample that we got from the treasurer's office. The tax bills are going to be going out here shortly, so you can actually see them.
Yeah, here, let me pull up. I got a picture here that'll be just right, I think. There we go.
So if you can see, that's the boy. This person actually lives in the city of Boise. So
right.
And if you look at on our website, we have a schematic as well that shows where all the taxing districts and where the money goes.
Oh, that giant pie chart. I've seen that.
The pie chart. The cities and the schools are the primary users of our property tax dollars, as you can see here. City of Boise. This particular property is in the city of Boise, so they're the primary source or taking most of the property tax.
Right.
Then it's the schools, and you can see there's several school items there, and then the county. That's.
Ooh, sorry about that. What happened? All right, hang on. I got it. I'll get it back up, because this is a really interesting piece to me in particular. Oh no. Okay. We'll just look at it. I'll pop it up but here, you can use my phone. So again, we have the individual schools, right? And we have many of the individual school pieces. And one of them is it looks like a permanent override.
Right.
Now
get to vote on that.
Right. Right. And the permanent override is like, okay, we're going to reset the base that we have that we can increase on annually. We get to increase it annually. We're looking to not just get a one-time bump. We're looking to reset the trajectory or the place that we get taxes from. So that's the permanent override, correct?
Right.
Gotcha.
The override is over and above what you get for other things. What I've done there.
Yeah, here.
I'll give you.
That's the one we're talking about. So we have the permanent override. Then you also have Ada County Highway. Then you have College of Western Idaho. And then you have emergency medical. And those all make up a tax bill of... what is it? 3,200
in this.
Excuse me. Total would be 2,800
in this particular case.
Yeah, and that's for a valuation. Total assessed value of $479,000 with a homestead exemption.
Right. So what people need to do, back to what you were saying, they need to focus on these taxing districts that are their unique taxing districts when they get their bill, and then they can go to those taxing districts, and there's a number there, and it'll tell you who you can call them. Yeah. They have to have a budget hearing. They have to have a budget that's available to the public so you can review it, back to what you were saying before, so that individually each one of those taxing districts have to account to the electorate that are giving them their money. This is what we're spending our money for, whether it's the city of Boise, Boise School District, Highway District, Ada County Highway District, right. Us, the county commissioners. And you notice the county commissioners are... that's all the county functions. That's planning and zoning, the sheriff, the courts, and interesting enough, the county budget of that $547 on this particular case in this property, about over 60% of that is for public safety and the courts.
Interesting.
The primary portion of our budget that we have jurisdiction over, because in the process, these people, each one of these taxing districts, set their budgets. They send us their budget. We can't change their budget. What we do then is take their budget, all the budgets of the 41 taxing districts, including our little piece of it, that the county, we have control over setting it, and then get to the assessor. The assessor evaluates the property every year, January 1st date, its value on January 1st. Based on that value, we have the total assessed value, the total amount of budgets that are required. And that's where this tax levy comes in. We can tax up to that amount for the city of Boise, up to that amount for the Boise School District. Each one of those levies, so we actually then go out and set the levies. After we've gotten all those, set the levies, and then the tax bills go out through the treasurer's office, which is this,
Right.
telling you how much you owe to pay for all that. So it's really important that the people know that process. So I appreciate you bringing that up. The process, that how we get to that point, and whether it's the highway district, fire district, cemetery district, all of those people who are, one, you elect the board of directors of each one of those, whether it's school district, city council.
Right.
And those are the people then that set your budget, and they have a budget hearing. You can go in and talk to those people. Even before the budget hearing, you can talk to them and say, we'd like you to spend more money on the library for the city of Boise. Meridian, that's what you need to consider as well, because the city of Meridian doesn't have, they have an independent library district, people living in the city of Meridian.
So you wouldn't appeal to the city, you just go straight to the library district.
Correct.
Yeah, see, it's so interesting how all of the levers are independent. It's like you pull the lever or you measure like whatever you want, but like you can address each of these individual little pieces, which I think is wild. Like it's, again, you don't have this gigantic jumble where you or some other elected representative could kind of manipulate it, short fund the one thing everybody's going to care about and then get everything else fully funded. It's like, no, we're going after it bit by bit by bit. It's also interesting. I had a conversation with a friend months back. He lives within the city of Boise limits, and his property tax bill, our properties turn out to be assessed roughly the same amount, but his property tax bill is twice as much as mine. And the key is it was essentially the city of Boise piece, because I live in an unincorporated Ada County.
Right.
And yeah, again, it's one of those things where it's like, look, I don't know what to tell you. You get the benefits of the city, which is interesting because I also like, they don't look at a wristband when I go to City Park, but that's just the way these taxing districts go.
And so it's really incumbent on the people. Our system of government was created by our founders on purpose to be exactly what you just said, very individualized, and it needs to be convoluted. It needs to be time consuming, and a lot of people need to be involved in it. And that's why we've kept that in Idaho. It seems like it's convoluted and disjointed, but it isn't. It gives individuals the opportunity to have direct contact with the decision makers on their taxing. And that's really valuable. People need to understand that and then participate in it. We would welcome people coming to us and saying, just like the skate park, when we created Expo Idaho, the park at Expo Idaho, that's what we tried to do, is get, what do people really want us to be spending our money on in this park? Yeah. Not only for now, but 50 years from now, like Central Park, again, my comparison. The people who made those decisions 100 years ago in New York, people now are benefiting from because of their farsightedness of creating something that could have some longevity, some continuity and longevity.
Right. Yeah. And again, government closest to the people. Right.
Correct.
Like if we jumble all of this stuff together and we're like, hey, it's really easy. You just pay your property tax bill. Well, trust me, I'll take care of it. It's like, no. It is more laborious. It is absolutely something that you have to pay closer attention to. And again, when I was having conversations with Chief Tominski and Chief Stowell, like I don't live in Canyon County and I don't live in Starr either. These are not people that like I'm not voting for them one way or another. But I think it's awesome that they're trying to communicate, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what we're doing. I mean, like, this is the process. You got to reach people and you got to explain to them. And if people say, hey, I don't want that, they're like, that's fine. Then I'll offer the best service I can within this budget. And if you want more service later on, then, we're going to have to deal with that. And if, the wait times for ambulances and stuff go up, then, collectively the community can decide if it's right or wrong. But it's making that appeal, right? Representative Moyle said, Mike said something about when we were discussing 389, because he came in to talk about 389. He said, look, you get a certain amount of money, then you get foregone, you got a couple other things. And he said, look, if you want more, we have to have a conversation.
Right.
That's it. He was like, but my goal with this, and I don't know if it was right or wrong, this is just what he was saying. He's saying my goal with this is that, the permanent residents don't get hosed or don't get significantly hampered by the influx of people. And there have been influxes of people like Matt, right, who have come here because it's so great. And it's not fair to imagine that you, somebody who's been for a long time, should have a property tax bill that gets jacked up. It's like, look, it's possible. You just have to make your case. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's not a guarantee that you can just get as much money as you want. You have to appeal to the residents of Idaho. And that's the participation. Like, everybody has to come to the table.
And the important part about that is one of my mottos is empower people, not government. But they have to be engaged in order to do that.
Right.
They have to be conscious of it and engaged to do that. And it's really important. As I've told you before, one of my favorite people is Alexis de Tocqueville in Democracy in America is his book. And he was a Frenchman who came over to the United States in the 1830s, 1830 and 31. Spent 18 months driving, driving a horse.
Yeah, right.
Around. He went all the way up the East Coast, across the North, and then came down the Mississippi River, and then went up into the internal part of what was then the United States. And then he wrote the book. And a couple of things he said that are instructive is he said one of the powers of America was we empower people. And it's, again, convoluted, time-consuming, and then he made the statement, what happens in America is you have a participating electorate and an informed electorate, which the founders gave us, which made it so that we could have those decisions made, back to what you were saying, based on information. As a policymaker that I've had the opportunity of being on several levels of government, one of the most frustrating things of having to make policy decisions is feeling that I didn't have all the information yet, but I still had to make that policy decision. That's why we really do rely. And some people think that, well, my idea isn't that important and, it's not that significant, but we get some really good ideas from people. When we had our Greenbelt hearing, because we were talking about, the traffic, because there's increasing traffic on the Greenbelt, and some people wanted us to put speed limits on,
sure,
that sort of thing. So we got some really good public participation and ideas. Signage is one of the things. If you could just tell us this at this point on the Greenbelt, it would be useful for us, because then we know. Or just trimming the trees differently on the side of the Greenbelt. Those were a couple of suggestions I think about. Because when we go around a corner,
right, you need a line of sight.
We don't know that around the corner there's going to be a tree branch there, or whatever. So those are the kinds of suggestions that the people can really help us make better policy decisions. Because I have never gone the whole length of the Greenbelt, right, as an example. So I don't know the Garden City portion as well as I know, like the Boise City or other sections, and same thing with other people.
Well, Commissioner Dayley, we've talked about a lot of things. I appreciate you. I know it's a working day. Do you have anything else you want to hit on today? Again, we talked about Expo, we talked about property tax.
Well, I guess just my main thing is involvement of people, just encourage people to be involved. And I think that's, quite frankly, that was one of the exciting things that I found from this last election that we just had, is we had a participation rate that was beyond what we normally have in Idaho as well as nationwide. And that's the magic of what makes America work, is the participation. And so just encourage people to be conscious. And I know it's very difficult. I'm old enough now that my kids aren't in baseball, softball and soccer and all the other things that you have, and going to school back and forth. And so there are a lot of commitments on everybody's time, and we realize that. But each person, just pick out what they can do, because everybody can't do everything.
Yeah, sure.
But like I said, that little piece that you have to offer that you think might not be that important might be just the kernel we need to make a better decision.
Yeah, and what I find amazing is I didn't realize this until recently, but we have elections every year.
Yes.
Like we're like, you don't get, every November rolls around, it's like, okay, here we go. We may or may not have a primary depending on the year, right? But we have elections and we make decisions on an annual basis. And for instance, this coming year, I know at the very least we'll have like school board member elections,
city elections,
like it's wild. I was thinking about just the kind of the schedule of conferences. Like, well, the legislative session's coming up, so December through like the end of April is going to be kind of wild because you get legislative previews and things like that. And then you get into the legislative session. That's going to be wild. I got a studio downtown. That's going to be fantastic. And
that's great to hear. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I have a studio that I'm a member of the state PTA, and the state PTA, I'm the legislative rep actually.
Fantastic.
And the state PTA was like, hey, we have this office downtown. You can set up a studio during the session. And that way you'll only be like a block away from the Capitol. I'm like, awesome. This is good. So we're going to mainline it. It's going to be great. So
that will be great because you will be able to feed. And this is another thing about information that I was talking about. People need to get information. And one of the luxuries people don't realize living so close to the legislative process, you can participate in the legislative process. And having been a legislator, we welcome that. The legislators welcome that to come in because they have the same situation I just said at the county level. When we make decisions, again, the frustration is getting all the information. I mean, I remember a hearing in the legislature, like the Greenbelt one. We had this lady came in and she happened to be a constituent of mine that I didn't even know, but she was a constituent, introduced herself, and she gave us some information that was really valuable. And so I went up to her afterwards and said, can I draw on your expertise when we have questions like this? And she said, sure. And so I still use her because she has some expertise that is really valuable to us. And so I just the other day I called her, as a matter of fact, and asked her a question. But
it's awesome. And I've always found all of the elected officials very approachable. Like literally just emailing them or calling them right out of the blue, and they'll pick, like several of them have picked up, like without even knowing who and I have a 510 phone number, right? Like they picked up. I'm like, this is wild. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. But again, it's the kind of thing where I know December through April will be kind of slammed. And then I'll probably get a little bit of a break in May and June. But then starting in July and August, we have the election right around the corner for city and school. And man, it's going to be wild. It'll be very fun.
May and June, you need to go online because we will have the precise dates for the budget. Budget setting starts in January, actually. Everybody starts reviewing their budget, going over their budget, but May and June are critical areas. That's when, again, back to the property tax thing, you will get, every property owner will get their tax notice in November for the tax bill. But precursor to that is the assessment notice. Because as I said, the assessor has to have the assessment done based on the January 1st date. They will send out their notices in May of your assessment. And another caution, your assessed value does not relate to your tax bill directly. It's not proportional. Because back to what you were saying is for your friend in Boise versus you living here. It depends on what taxing district you're in, what the assessments are, the rate of assessment.
Yeah.
So, but you can appeal your assessment, your assessed value, if you think that is incorrect. And the time to do it is in the spring, not in the fall when you get your tax bill.
So if I get my my assessment, my tax assessment, my property assessment from, that's Rebecca Arnold, right? County. So she sends it out. And if I think it's wrong, I can appeal or request a review or something. That's in the May timeframe.
There's a process. That's when the Board of County Commissioners are called the Board of Equalization. We go into our Board of Equalization, we have meetings, and anybody who wants to appeal their tax assessment can come in what the assessor assessed, and then we have the obligation to review it, and if we feel it's erroneous, we can change it. We can change that assessment.
One interesting thing, just real fast, about the assessed value is I reached out to Idaho Central Credit Union, probably it was like last year or the year before or something, just trying to get information about what home equity line of credit requirements they have. And they actually determine the value of your property, not from an independent assessment, but from your property tax assessment. So if you like your property taxes, if you dislike your property tax assessment from the standpoint that you you think you're going to have a high tax burden, that's fine, but be careful messing with it, because if you're interested in getting a home equity line of credit, then they may be using that assessment, which would naturally be beneficial to you if you want a higher line of credit. So just a little nugget there. It's a good time.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, we did have someone appeal their assessment last year
for a higher value
on that basis. Said, and we said, you want your value to go up? And
yes,
he said,
I do.
He said, yes, this is a higher value than you're assessing it at, and I think it needs to be valued higher. And then
look at that. Like how, and again, that's not a system that was in play that I ever experienced in my former state. So again, just be aware there are nuances to the benefits and drawbacks of having a higher assessed value. In case
because again, it's not a direct ratio.
Right.
Just because your assessment went up doesn't mean your taxes are going to go up.
Right, because of the mill levy rate and things of that nature.
And the budgets that are set.
Right.
If the budgets that are set lower, then your taxes will still go down, even your property value went up.
Right. Or even if the budgets stay the same, but we have a larger pool of people paying into it, their values. Yeah. So like that's a different conversation.
Yes.
Commissioner Dayley, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. Let's do it again.
Thank you. I will.